Okay, we're almost done. Let's go to the building construction view. Usually when I do these, I don't even model the ducts, but you could. This would be ducts that are uninsulated or poorly insulated. Um, these are thermostat schedules. So a thermostat schedule is at what temperature do you want your zone at? And here it has a setback from, so it looks like it's 50 degrees, 55 all night, and then they will bring it back. Let's see, this is winter, good. So they'll heat it to 70 from 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and then they'll let it drift back down to 55. Okay, that's not so bad. There is occupancy schedules. Now this is what percentage of the people that you said were, well, let me back up. Occupancy schedules. Okay, you'll see these numbers 20, 80, 20, 0. It doesn't mean there's 20 people there. What it means is what percentage of this number of occupants, well, there's 0. Let's go to a different one. What percentage of this number of occupants are actually there at any hour? So if we open this up, we'll see that 20% of that 219 are there in the morning, and they think that 80% would be there around lunch. Okay. Now, the only reason they care about that is the occupants will create heat. And so when you have more occupants, you have more air conditioning and less heating requirements. It does not do CO2. You can't use this for demand control ventilation. And then finally, it's use defaults. This form is for defaults. These inputs maybe are never used, except for these two are always used. So this is the amount of heat per occupant. Those are always used no matter what. But the rest are just defaults that may be used if you want them to. For example, the ventilation. So this is for the minimum outside air CFM. Here I'm saying 0.38 CFM per square foot. But if I wanted to auto size the outside air, let me do that. Or yeah, if I wanted to auto size, it would use that 0.38 CFM per square foot. And I can go into system form and I can find that it's being auto sized. Okay, if I wanted to type in my own amount of outside air, then I don't have to use that default, and I can now go back and I could type in whatever I want. So outside air, and I could type in my own number. Okay. Okay, that's that one. There are others. So there's watts per square foot. Receptacle, that would be, so let's say I go into the lighting and I look and see how that's italic. That's because it's not my 2.2 or 2. If I try to get the default in there, that's where that comes in. But you don't have to use it. If you know it, or you think it's 1 watt per square foot, it's 1 watt per square foot, and that's that. Okay, so basically those use defaults, they're not necessarily used, except for these two are. Okay. Finally, you have to have a use default. Let's say I got rid of one. I'll cut this one out, and I'll cut out my occupancy. Now I think, I'm surprised this, there you go. It's going to complain, see, and it changes the zone name and everything. It really doesn't like it if you don't have an occupancy schedule and use defaults, and you end up with that problem. Okay, so you really need to have those. Okay, next view is lighting. Lighting's pretty easy. It's actually a really nice form. There's two ways you can do this. You can type in the wattage, the lamp and ballast wattage. You know, you can get your lighting from the library, which has all that, and you can count the number of fixtures and put them in. Or what you can do is, if you're doing a quick audit, you can just say, well, you know what, I think it's 1.2 watts per square foot. We'll use that. And you can use that, as your rule of thumb, and then maybe when you're calibrating, change it to maybe 1.1 or 1.4. Or what you can do, maybe you had a lighting, what I often do is I get a lighting audit report from someone else who's counted all the lights and knows the watts per square foot, and I'll look at some representative areas and and average those out and then use those averages. So maybe the hallways are 1.2, but we noticed that the dormitories were only 0.8. So for different zone types, I might put different densities in, but that's a lot faster. Otherwise, if you're doing every type of light fixture, it could be a little time consuming. There's also schedules associated with the lighting, so this is when the lighting is on. I typically don't use 0 unless I really do think they turn everything off, but usually they'll leave a little bit on. So maybe you'll have 10% on at nighttime, or maybe 5%. It's up to you, and the building actually. The next view is equipment. This is you can, if you wanted. Let me open up this small restaurant. You can, if you want, itemize and look at all the different kinds of equipment and figure out how many kilowatts everything is. See, they've done that here. That's fine if you have the time, and you might, and it will be a better audit for it. So that's good to do. But if you don't have the time, then you can just go about it a different way, where you just say, look, I'm just going to use I think it's 0.5 watts per square foot, and you could do that. Okay, and you just call this miscellaneous appliance, and you just call it plug load or something like that. PLAG. Boy, I'm having a hard time typing here. Okay, so you can do that if you want. It's another way of going about it. Okay, there's another type of item. It's rarely used, but we do have it. It's called a process. A process is something, it's more like, let me open up a library. We'll find it in there. It's mostly for manufacturing. Let's say you were melting glass or something, then there's two kinds of equipment. Then there's two kinds of power that's used. There is so here's some, oh boy, hold on a sec. You're going to use electricity and gas in some pieces of equipment. So I think one of these might have said glass melting. Maybe I picked the wrong one. Gas kiln, glass, well, that's a kiln. Here we go, glass melting. I don't know much about glass melting, but you can add a process from the library, or if you want, you can make your own. But this is a piece of equipment that uses gas and electric. Well, not here, but it could. And it also can deal with changes in state. So, here we have the latent heat of fusion for melting. And in the help forms, and I don't remember which one, they've got some pretty intense equations in here that explain how they do everything. But it might actually be useful if you're modeling, industrial equipment. Okay, I think that's about it. The last thing we could add is a pool, and you can have indoor pools or outdoor pools. It'll be indoor if it's in a zone that is not an exterior zone. Then it will be default indoor. And then you can add the schedule would be, darn it, hold on a sec. The schedule would be your pool cover schedule. And if you want more information about this, just look in the cookbook, because I cover that pretty good. So that's it for your tour of all these esoteric inputs. I hope you took notes, because it's very useful to have it all in writing. Finally, boy, that sucked.